"If it's the middle of the night, how do you expect me to know if the sun's shining or not?" replied the weather snake angrily. "You're just wasting my time. Come back in the morning and I'll tell you then." And he crawled under his bathtub. "Idiot," the king shouted. But he was too tired to argue with the weather expert anymore. He staggered to his car and fell asleep. Soon they were all snoring as loud as steam trains. When he heard the noise as loud as trains, little Willigumble thought it safe to appear. He scrambled over the rubbish and found his friends flattened out in their jam tins. He went round to them all, Happy Gumble, Jolly Gumble, Merry Gumble, and the rest, but they were too tightly lodged in for Willie to get them out on his own. He just wasn't strong enough. "Try and have a tink, Tinking-Gumble," he said. "There must be some way of getting you out." Tinking-Gumble tried and tried, but no tink came. "It's no good," said the tinker in a muffled voice. "I must be squashed up too hard." "Oh dear," said Willie. Until now, Tinking-Gumble had always managed some sort of a tink when needed most, even if a small one. "When this king's party's coming up too," Willie groaned. "This is the worst jam we've ever been in." He went from tin to tin, trying to cheer people up, but he felt so sad himself that he was not much good at it. "Stop trying to cheer us up, Willie," Happy Gumble said, "and mind you don't get caught yourself." Willie Gumble mooched about. "I've got to think of something. I've got to," he kept saying. But the job was too big for the little Willie this time, it seemed. Being hot and dusty after his long walk, he decided to take a bath. Near the weather snake's home, he found a shallow dish that did not leak. This he filled with water and hopped in. Good ideas sometimes come whilst bathing, even to people who are not tinkers. As he splashed in his shallow dish, a little thought came that seemed quite silly at first, but it grew and grew till it became bigger than Willie himself. He jumped out of the bath and began the busiest night of his life. First he scraped some soot from an old stove, wrapped it in a paper parcel, and asked the bat to perch it on the weather snake's chimney. He threw water at the seaweed until it went wet and limp. He searched till he found a fork and used it to dig up the shadow stick which he dragged away and hid. He went into the bush, into all the damp places where there were frogs, and whispered something to each one. "All right, Willigumble," they croaked. "We don't mind helping." After talking to the frogs, he met Spiny Anteater, shuffling along looking for ants. "The very person I wanted to see," said Willie, and showed him a large ant heap outside the weather snake's bathtub. Then he spent a long time looking for someone, and when he had found him, a long time talking. At last he came back, chuckling all over with little Gumble chuckles. "There won't be any king's party work for you tomorrow," he told his squashed-up mates. "The king won't be having a birthday. You see." That was all he would say. Leaving the Gumbles rather bewildered, Willie climbed a tree and settled down comfortably to wait for morning. Next day the sun rose into a cloudless sky. It promised to be a lovely day for a picnic, or for the Bottersnakes to have a party, and the Gumbles groaned. Just our luck. The sun was quite hot by the time the Bottersnakes woke. They yawned, stretched, and remembered they had to go and see the weather snake. "Wake up, weather snake!" they bawled, and banged and danced and bumped on the bat. Down came the bag of soot that Willigumble's bat had perched on the chimney. The weather snake crawled out looking blacker than usual. "Tut, bad sign," he said, brushing off soot. He looked at his piece of seaweed. It was limp and wet because during the night Willigumble had soaked it. "Tut, tut," said the weather snake. He looked at the ants who were climbing trees and building roofs to their nests and rushing madly about because during the night Spiny Anteater had frightened them so. "Tut, tut, tut," said the weather snake, "worse and worse." He looked for the shadow of the shadow stick and couldn't see it because the stick wasn't there, and said, "Tut, tut, tut, tut." He looked at his rain gauge, which was brimming with Willigumble's bathwater, and said, "Rained hard in the night." "Tut, tut, 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 tut." The king of the Bottersnakes was getting impatient. "Don't stand there going like a motorbike. Tell us if it's going to stay fine." "You can't take chances with the weather," said the weather snake very wisely. "The signs are so bad I shouldn't be surprised if it was raining already." The Bottersnakes looked anxiously at themselves to see if they were shrinking. It would have been a good old red-eared argument about it, but all the frogs within half a mile started croaking, "Ow-rook, ow-rook," because during the night Willigumble had asked them to. "That's another bad sign," said the weather snake. Owl interrupted this line of tuts by looking out of his hollow tree. not because Willigumble had asked him to, only because he felt like it, and remarking, "Too wet to who," or so it sounded. "I know it is," the Weathersnake shouted. "Tut, tut, 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 tut! Ouch, my corns! Oh, my corns!" They had started shooting like anything, and that was because Yabby, the crabfish, had nipped his toes hard. And Yabby was the someone Willigumble had spent a long time talking to during the night. "I've never known it more likely to rain in my whole forecasting career. I'm going in before I shrink," said the Weathersnake. And he hobbled into his bathtub to nurse his painful feet. The Buttersnakes, who were getting hot standing in the sun, didn't know what to think. Then one of the king's red-hot ears sizzled as though a drop of rain had fallen on it. They heard it plainly. "Sss. My birthday will be postponed until the weather improved," announced the king hastily. He retired to his palace as fast as he could waddle. Little Willigumble, who had squeezed the drop of rain from a piece of wet moss, laughed until he nearly fell out of the tree.